The Fake Genius, Demystifying a $30 billion fraud. Welcome to The Explainer, everyone. Today, we're completely setting aside the myths, the rumors, and the absolute media frenzy to unpack the actual nuts and bolts mechanisms behind one of the most jaw-dropping financial collapses in modern history. We're going to deconstruct the story of Sam Bankman-Fried and the spectacular implosion of the cryptocurrency exchange FTX. I mean, seriously, how does a $30 billion empire just vanish in 4 days? It sounds impossible, right? Well, today, we are stripping away the hype and the sensationalism to get straight to the factual mechanics of this collapse. By the end of this explainer, you'll understand exactly how the math, the markets, and the deception all collided in a perfect storm. Let's dive right in by contrasting the carefully curated image of this crypto savior against the staggering reality of his empire's absolute destruction. At peak SBF, we saw a guy with a $26 billion net worth, highly produced Super Bowl ads, and unprecedented mainstream legitimacy. But the catastrophic fall? Well, that revealed handcuffs, bankruptcy court, and billions of dollars in missing customer funds. To understand how we went from peak legitimacy to absolute ruin so incredibly fast, we have to look at the very foundation of his public image. And that foundation was a concept known as effective altruism. This is a philosophy centered around maximizing wealth through high-paying careers, but specifically to give it all away to charitable causes. It's a strategy known as earning to give. Sam Bankman-Fried used this as his ultimate shield of credibility. You know, he wasn't presented as some greedy Wall Street banker. He was the quirky genius who only wanted to get incredibly wealthy so he could literally save the world. And honestly, it was an incredibly persuasive narrative. To solidify that savior persona, they bought trust on a massive scale to build a multi-billion-dollar mainstream facade. Just think about these investments. Tom Brady and Gisele Bündchen as ambassadors. $135 million for the naming rights to the Miami Heat arena. Every single Major League Baseball umpire wearing an FTX logo. A $15 million deal with Kevin O'Leary. Plus, massive backing from elite institutions like Sequoia Capital and BlackRock. This relentless barrage of high-profile endorsements built an ironclad illusion of absolute safety around FTX. What's truly wild is just how deeply the elite financial world bought into this hype. Sequoia Capital, literally one of the most prestigious venture capital firms on the planet, actually published an article with this quote, "Sam Bankman-Fried has a savior complex, and maybe you should too." They praised him to the moon, fully buying into his genius persona, even though he notoriously played the video game League of Legends during their multi-million-dollar pitch meetings with him. They just ate it up. But to really understand the fraud, we have to look past the marketing and examine the core conflict of interest at the heart of SBF's empire. First, you have FTX. This is the public-facing exchange designed to safely hold and match customers' deposits for trading. Then you have Alameda Research, SBF's completely private trading firm, which was designed to make high-risk speculative bets with its own money. Think of it as a safe vault versus a risky casino. These two entities were supposed to be completely 100% separate. The magic internet money mechanism. So, how did this house of cards grow so unnaturally massive? We have to transition over to the specific financial tool that enabled the massive inflation of SBF's wealth, the FTT token. 350 million. That was the total supply of FTT tokens created entirely out of thin air by FTX. And here is the trick. Because FTX and Alameda held the vast majority of these tokens themselves, they severely limited the supply available to the public. By doing this, they essentially controlled the perceived market value of the token, keeping its price artificially sky-high on their balance sheets. And this perfectly captures the sheer absurdity of the operation. FTT was quite literally magical internet money from nothing that had no real value other than what people speculated its value to be. But here is the critical, truly disastrous step. Alameda Research took these highly illiquid speculative tokens and used them as massive collateral to secure billions of dollars in real-world loans. They were essentially borrowing real, hard cash against monopoly money that they printed themselves. This deeply precarious setup triggered the famous 4-day collapse. And the sheer speed at which this disaster unfolded in November 2022 is just staggering. On day 1, a publication called CoinDesk leaks Alameda's balance sheet, exposing to the world that their massive wealth is mostly just FTT tokens. Day 2, rival CEO Changpeng Zhao, known as CZ, tweets that his massive exchange, Binance, will sell all its FTT holdings. By day 3, mass panic ensues, triggering massive customer withdrawals from FTX. And on day 4, Binance offers a rescue buyout, takes one look at the books,
immediately abandons the deal, and FTX is forced into bankruptcy. Boom, 4 days.
So, the crucial takeaway here is that this financial panic triggered a classic bank run. Let's translate that dense crypto jargon into a universally understood financial phenomenon. A bank run happens when a huge wave of customers simultaneously tries to withdraw their deposits because they're terrified the institution is going bankrupt. If the institution doesn't actually have the cash in reserve to pay everyone, it collapses. When FTX customers ask for their money back, the money simply wasn't there.
Let's walk through that final, agonizing twist of the collapse. In the absolute midst of the panic, Binance CEO CZ signs a non-binding letter offering to buy FTX and save the customers. It looked like a miracle lifeline. But just hours later, major financial outlets report that U.S. regulators, the SEC and CFTC, are investigating FTX. The result? Binance completely yanks the deal, explicitly citing mishandled customer funds. Notice how fast that ultimate lifeline evaporated the second regulators and a rival actually looked under the hood.
Uncovering the web of lies. With the collapse complete and the company in bankruptcy, it's time to examine the reality of the internal operations that were kept entirely hidden from the public eye. To really grasp the scale of the deception here, listen to the words of John Ray III, the new CEO appointed to manage the FTX bankruptcy. And keep in mind, this is the exact same man who oversaw the infamous Enron bankruptcy. He stated, "Never in my career have I seen a complete failure of corporate controls and such a complete absence of trustworthy financial information as occurred here." That quote just cements the unprecedented, historic scale of the incompetence at play.
Because the reality behind this supposed genius operation, it was just an unsophisticated, incredibly reckless piggy bank for its executives. Look at these facts. There were no actual accountants on staff. The top executives communicated using auto-deleting apps to hide their tracks. Inside the system's code, Alameda was secretly exempted from the auto-liquidation rules that everyone else had to follow. Billions of dollars in everyday customer funds were secretly funneled to Alameda to cover their disastrous trading bets. And maybe worst of all, those customer deposits were used by SBF and his inner circle to purchase millions in luxury Bahamian real estate.
The legal consequences were naturally immense. 115. That is the maximum number of years in federal prison Sam Bankman-Fried faced across 8 criminal charges, including wire fraud, securities fraud, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. The brilliant altruist was unmasked as the architect of one of the largest financial frauds in American history.
But before we wrap this up, we really need to pivot and look at the broader crypto ecosystem. Consider the eerie operational parallels out there. The fallen FTX relied on a proprietary token, had an opaque corporate structure, and illegally commingled customer funds. Now look at Binance, the active exchange that helped expose FTX. Binance also has its own proprietary token. It operates with an opaque corporate structure, lacking clear headquarters, and it is actively facing intense U.S. regulatory investigations. The similarities in their underlying mechanics are definitely hard to ignore. So given the absolute mirage of FTX's $30 billion valuation, and knowing that similar structures exist elsewhere in the market, it leaves us with one incredibly provocative question. Is the remaining cryptocurrency industry a walking time bomb waiting to go off? I hope this explainer has provided you with the clear, structured understanding you need to look at this industry and decide that for yourself. Thank you so much for joining me, and keep questioning what's behind the curtain.